No matter what happens, the British public loves doing race riots. Anyway, let's get to Israel and Iran. Obviously, the MOU is dead in the water now, at least according to Donald Trump. The situation is active. It's fluid. We're going to be monitoring that. We'll get to the Ann Widdecombe news later. But before we do that, let's start with Israel telling the United States of an Iranian plot to assassinate Trump. New report says. Maki Zanin, thank you for the 20 gift subs.
On the conflict with Iran and a stunning report that the country was planning to assassinate President Trump. The Wall Street Journal reported Thursday that Israel shared that intelligence about it with the U.S. All this coming as tensions between the U.S. and Iran remain high after the latest air and missile strikes. Charlie D'Agata has more from Washington. Charlie, good morning.
Good morning to you, Kelly. The fighting this week has been by far the most serious escalation we've seen since the U.S. and Iran signed the framework last month that was supposed to lead to a more permanent peace agreement. And although last night was quiet for the first time in days.
Hey, are you happy Israel's now going to get a pro-AIPAC, pro-genocide senator in Maine now that you led the mob in cooping the voters of Maine? Oh, damn. We got Graham Plattner dead enders in here. That's crazy. Here, if you're 100% in support of Graham Plattner, I mean, there's a reasonable suspicion in his background, considering that his brother-in-law was and it still is, I think, a FDD guy. So, if the credible rape allegations were not enough for you, there's at least like ample suspicion that you could have due to his brother-in-law.
That fragile ceasefire is barely holding together.
Are you talking like bad empanada now? No, I'm not. Here's the thing. I think I had a fairly reasonable assessment with Graham Plattner, which is why it pissed off everybody, right? I looked at the red flags. I pointed to them. Nowhere near as much as like his Reddit posts and Reddit history, especially like detailing his experiences. I chalked that up to like, a hoorah grunt, greatly embellishing and thinking that was hot shit and cool. Okay. And I took a very centrist approach to the Graham Plattner situation, recognizing the red flags while also simultaneously saying that he was a far better option with the readily available information at the time, far better option than Janet Mills, and also far better option than Susan Collins. For that reason, a lot of people got mad at me and they said, no, you should actually write him out across the board. You should write him out immediately. It turns out those people were vindicated when new evidence came out. Okay? When new evidence came out. Now, here's the thing. I wanted to also identify certain red flags myself. What is this? Been watching you for years and always thought you were always smart, but this is some audience captured shit. No, it's ironic because everyone says that. And they've said that for years and years. And it's really funny because most of the positions that I have, well, all the positions that I have are just my genuine perspective. But a lot of the positions that I take on issues such as this one, when there is like, nuance involved, end up pissing everybody off because most people just want black and white. Most people want unconditional support or unconditional enmity. And it's interesting that my cautiously optimistic perspective, where I always hedged my my approach to Graham Plattner, the demands that I made to his team over and over again that were very favorable initially and became not so favorable after I started calling out some of these red flags, including the tattoo, including his background, including his, CV, Blackwater tours, and try to get a better assessment on like where he was. Was he actually a real anti-war former veteran, or was he actually simply playing a role? These are the questions that I had that I wanted to figure out. The campaign stopped talking to me after that. It just, they avoided me like the plague. And some people might say, Some people, yes, he's got skeletons in his closet, but this was just objectively a coup against 150,000 voters in Maine. I think that even if you were to believe that the Democratic Party did everything that it can to rat fuck Graham Plattner, I don't think you would like the results of leaving Graham Plattner on the ticket, because there are always going to be people who saw that he had a credible rape allegation and decide not to vote for him. Can't find it within themselves to vote for him. Many women, for example. And that's perfectly valid and it's perfectly reasonable. And so at that point, it doesn't even matter. Even if you're making this like cold heart analysis, an immoral analysis or an amoral analysis, it still doesn't matter, because Graham Plattner is credibly accused of rape by a former partner. Okay? And the unfortunate reality is he's running as a Democrat, right? Unless the political piece falls apart as much as it already has, I don't think it has fallen apart. I don't think it has fallen apart as much as you think it has. So, dead enders straight from r/politics, Bernie bro smears. Wait, what? I've called fucking Joe Brandon dead enders and Kamala Harris dead enders as well. What are you talking about? It's just you can actually consider a group of people who are still riding with a person after the person is like openly admitted that they're going to drop their campaign a dead ender, because that's what it is. Once the campaign stopped answering, you should have called that out immediately. No, I mean, I mentioned it. I mentioned it over and over again, but it doesn't matter. Hasanabi been wearing the suit too long. He's got DNC consultant brain. You were wrong about Kamala in 2024. You're wrong now. The establishment are pros and the left is easily manipulated. Go look at local Facebook and news posts. Mainers are not buying this allegation. This is how the left loses. We do centrist work for them. What evidence? Contemporaneous conversations between the victim and other people, third parties, is a fairly reliable metric for assessing the accuracy of a claim. It's certainly enough to charge someone with sexual assault. It's not enough to convict. There would probably be, it's very difficult to convict someone on rape in this current criminal justice system, contrary to what men's rights activists and numerous other people say. But there is definitely enough to charge this person. So unless there is new information that has come out that shows that there isn't any timely conversations between Graham Plattner's victim and numerous other people, unless there's like new information that I'm not privy to, which even then I'd have to make a new assessment. The number of red flags, the additional things that he has said, paint a picture that I am uncomfortable with. I don't know why people are saying there isn't any contemporaneous evidence. Unless Politico invented third parties that Graham Plattner's ex spoke to, like the ex-boyfriend, unless they invented that, which is, fairly far-fetched. And to be fair, yes, Politico is owned by Axel Springer, who is an unbelievably pro-Israel person. So, that is real. There's a demand for a loyalty pledge to Israel from Axel himself. I just don't think that I like your assessment has to reach a certain standard. Like your hypothesis can't be more far-fetched than the readily available evidence. Anyway, Don't know why we're going back into the Graham Plattner allegations here instead of talking about what's going on currently. Israel telling the American government that there's an Iranian plot to assassinate Trump.
The fight between the U.S. and Iran entered a dangerous new phase, pushing the prospects for peace even further out of reach. This latest back and forth kicked off after U.S. officials said Iran fired on 3 commercial vessels earlier this week in the Strait.
So Axel Springer is the German media group that owns Politico. Okay. Axel Springer was a massive, massive fucking Zionist. New owners claim, according to Times of Israel from September 1st, 2021, new owners won't make Politico employees sign pro-Israel mission statement. But Axel Springer, the German firm that bought the U.S. news site, was such a staunch supporter of Israel that they would require the staff to place support to the Transatlantic Alliance and Israel. Okay?
Strait of Hormuz, a key shipping channel, particularly for oil. The Iranians want to control the strait and have shown they are willing to do it.
I think the new CEO is also just as insane, though, regardless. Look, Matthias Döpfner, CEO of Axel Springer, declares himself a Zionist to the World Jewish Congress and then calls for censorship of social media and the expulsion of anti-Semites from wherever legally possible. He insists that all European countries open their borders to Jewish immigration in the name of diversity. Europe must become more Jewish, Döpfner says. Now, some of this stuff is not that crazy. Like the way that this account is framing it is making it seem like it's this weird thing. But it is philo-Semitism. There is a classic German philo-Semitism that I don't know what it is, but there's a classic German philo-Semitism that you can clearly fucking spell out here. Okay?
An idea and a goal that only Jews can embrace. I'm a goy.
I love when these guys come out and they'll go to the World Jewish Congress and be like, well, I'm a goy. So with the stupid goy brain that I have, I still understand how important Israel is. I am the stupid goy. And I have the stupid goy brain.
And I'm a Zionist. With all my heart, out of conviction, and with passion. First, we need a zero-tolerance policy towards open hatred of Jews.
He's also known to reframe former Waffen SS slogans into Zionism slogans. He's fucking nuts. Yeah, I will never understand. Like, we gotta investigate some of the Germans and their attitude towards Israel in the same way that, you can only like do an autopsy analysis to like study the brains of football players to figure out like what level of CTE they had. That's how I feel about some Germans. Like the way that they approach the situation is so wild. And it's like, it's this weird, like idolatry, fetishization. It's just not something that you would experience in the real world at all.
All anti-Semites in word and deed, regardless of their origin, must be expelled wherever legally possible. British politician and Conservative Party leader Kami Badenoch put it clearly and courageously, I quote, anything that's inciting violence against Jews has got to go, quote end. We need this statement and its consequences not only in Britain, but in every democratic country. Second, Europe should introduce preferential immigration and citizenship for Jewish families. In the US, approximately 7.7 million Jews live. That is 2.2% of the population. In the EU and the UK combined, it is roughly 1 million. That is 0.2% and 10 times less.
Please don't center their Germanness when you've got the same exact type of guys running around all over your country. Yeah, the reason why I center their Germanness, by the way, that's got to be a German anti-Zionist, one of the, 15. So I'm going to treat this with respect because you guys are fighting a very different battle over there. But in the United States of America, this kind of attitude certainly exists as well. Mike Huckabee is like one of the torchbearers of this movement, right? But the difference is we can identify where that's coming from, and it's centered around evangelical Christian Zionism. Whereas in Germany, it does actually turn into this like national humiliation, this national understanding, or rather the national shame that they feel, where they actually get to offset the guilt of the Holocaust away from any kind of like European anti-Semitism to these nasty Arabs, right? This modern behemoth. The Arabs have taught us how to be anti-Semitic, is what they say sometimes. So I think it is. I think it stems from Germanness for sure, like modern Germanness, the modern understanding of a German nation state, their shared history, their shared culture. It's this strange offloading of the guilt of the Holocaust and the anti-Semitism that led to the Holocaust to the Muslims, to Islam. It's very odd. And that's the reason why I center Germanness around it. Rather than in the United States of America, I don't think there is that same level of guilt. There is a level of guilt for sure. There's a level of guilt amongst Americans for the famous story of the boats that were sent back to Germany that had Jewish refugees, right? Like that certainly exists in American culture, but to the degree that you see philo-Semitism from Germans does not exist in America at all, with the exception of white evangelical Protestant Christians. I think it's mostly just rooted in anti-Semitism. Yes, of course. Philo-Semitism is the other side of anti-Semitism. Zionism is by far the most convenient for if anti-Semitism nowadays, right-wingers of Europe could just hold on to their anti-Semitism by indulging in Zionism. I think that's part of it, yes.
Than in America. It is in Europe's own best interest to change that, and it is more than a gesture. If the idea of a multicultural society is to be taken seriously, then there is a
Bro, your German takes are not that good, man. Germans are the best at educating their country and culture about history. France and the UK still glorifies many of its atrocities. I don't think Germany features a tremendous amount of education on its, the actions it took in like its African campaigns. That's number one. And number two, what I'm talking about is quite literally a fixture of German culture, with the exception of like my German chatter is in here. The tying of Zionism and Judaism and the highlighting of Israel. I mean, Germany literally paid reparations, right, to the state of Israel. I mean, it was heavily featured in Ta-Nehisi Coates' writing, where he tried to make a case in the affirmative for reparations. Not true at all. I'm not German, but spent there. Okay, dude. Well, then maybe dial it back. Germany is one of the most aggressive in its approach to combating anti-Zionism. Like out of all the European countries, it's literally the most aggressive. It's far more aggressive than the United States of America, because the United States of America, there's still the First Amendment, so that like plays a formative role in restricting what the government can and can't do. They're obviously trying to get that away, or they're trying to destroy that. But there is an ideal. There is an understanding of Judaism, or a fetishization of Judaism and a philo-Semitism that exists in Germany. that I have compared to the way that Americans identify with like native culture. There is a similar fetishization of indigenous culture in the United States of America in the aftermath of the genocide of the indigenous populations that you see in Germany. The only difference is historically the Holocaust is far closer to modern German existence as opposed to the indigenous genocides were, 250 plus years ago and continued onward for throughout, the early frontierism. Having said that, the fetishization and the otherizing, or like the fetishization in general, is like identical almost. I literally write about this shit, man. It's terrifying. Yeah. It goes beyond the material necessity to have a colonial outpost in this resource-rich region for Germans. For Americans, like, their foreign policy decisions revolve around that. They don't give a fuck, right? There is no like, oh, we really fucked up with our mistreatment of the Jews or anything like that. It's pretty open and shut. What you see is what you get. They see it as a reliable colonial outpost, and its reliability is actually being called into question now. So there's obviously disagreements there in the State Department. There's always been some people in the State Department that have seen Israel as a massive national security threat. So the CIA and other functions of the state are of two different minds, and they are oftentimes butting heads with one another. Whereas in Germany, there is this higher prioritization of Israel due to the collective guilt of the Holocaust and how it's like formed into this idolization of the state of Israel, for sure. It's different. I don't know how else to describe it other than to say it's different. They feel it. Yeah. The Germans feel like there is a moral obligation to always defend Israel that goes even beyond capital. Of course, capital still plays a role in this. Capital always plays a role in this. Capitalism is the international organization of the economy. It's the only game in town. So, when you think about Axel Springer, for example, of course they have investments in the West Bank. Of course they have investments in Israel. Many of the pro-Israel Christians, of course, have a financial entanglement with the apartheid project. That's real. But what I'm talking about is like this this attitude that you see from German society. This attitude that you see from German society by and large that goes beyond the normal expectations. Having said that, I mean, German society is polled with regular frequency, and even German society, by and large, has recognized the atrocities that Israel is committing. It's just that you will never hear that from a person with a fraction of power. Even in the United States of America, there are people who are getting elected, for example, on anti-Zionist tickets. Whereas I feel like Die Linke is the closest that you can get to like a party with viability and not one of these like fucking 18-person Marxist-Leninist formations that exists in Germany. I'm talking like a viable party, a serious party that operates within German politics. Die Linke is the furthest left, right? And Die Linke still will, Die Linke only recently was able to come to terms with an official statement on Israel's genocide. And even then, they immediately paired that up with like the growth of anti-Semitism happening in Germany and other places as well. So I don't think that there is like appropriate representation within... Brother, you cannot be calling Die Linke a serious left party. I'm not. You're misunderstanding my point. It's a social democratic party at most. I'm saying that it's the furthest left party with any real viability. Okay? I'm not saying that... Guys, this conversation started with how cooked German politics is. Okay? Why does everybody always forget that I'm using the term viability very deliberately here? Okay? Please, this is a nuanced perspective. What I'm trying to say is there isn't a real recognition. There isn't a real recognition. There isn't any real proportional representation of German societal attitudes towards Israel in German politics. Okay? That's all I'm saying. You look at Germany, modern Germany, and their society, their attitude towards the nation state of Israel, and it's unbelievably negative. And yet there is no real party out there. There's no real party out there that actually abides by this attitude. You know what I mean? So like even Die Linke, which is supposed to be like the leftmost party with any serious viability, is nowhere near as close to the public sentiment on Israel in Germany. It's just not. There isn't enough representation of people, full stop. Yes, Israel is a great example of this lack of representation. Okay? Maybe explaining when you say viable, you mean it in the context of whether or not like a pregnancy is viable or not? No, viability is in like it's a serious party with like a decent amount of representation that can win seats. Okay, that's what viability means. Viability in the American electoral system is also implied. Like it's not like an American Communist Party, for example, but instead like a candidate that is viable, as in has a tremendous amount of support within striking distance, could potentially win. That's what viability means. Anyway, how the fuck are we talking about Germany? Oh my God. All right, I'm done. I'm done talking about Germany. Let's get back to Israel telling the United States government that Iran wants to kill Trump.
Disadvantage right now because they don't think President Trump has the will to sustain a campaign against them.
President Trump himself said this week he wasn't looking for the war to go on, calling the strikes retribution for Iranian aggression.
I think anything that happens is going to be over very quickly.
The strikes may be punitive, but they're also strategic. U.S. officials tell CBS News they've hit more than 170 Iranian military targets along the strait in the hopes of loosening Iran's hold on the waterway. Iran fired back, targeting key U.S. allies in the Gulf, including Kuwait, Qatar, and Bahrain.
This is not anywhere near an end of the war. This is just entering kind of a new phase.
In Iran, this all comes as crowds gathered for the funeral of the late supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei.
The German left is currently focused on you because they think the DSA will end up like Die Linke? Fuck no. There's 0% chance the Democratic Socialists of America would ever end up like Die Linke because the Democratic Socialists of America are outcasts from the normal political process. And the more it becomes a fixture in normal American politics, the more we run DSA candidates, the more they win elections in an uncompromising manner, and the more they put up a fight, the more they develop some sort of caucus or political power within the Democratic Party, the more radical they would become, not less. Why would they become less radical? I mean, we shall see. We shall see. I have a lot of confidence in this new slate of candidates that we've worked to get elected. Some of which are, many of which are Democratic Socialists, and some of which are adjacent, right? DSA has always recognized the genocide. DSA has always had a far more radical approach than Die Linke ever could come to terms with.
Some mourners pictured holding a banner that read, "Trump, we will kill you." The conflict has prompted extra security measures for President Trump in an unexpected switch. He left the NATO summit in Turkey this week in the old Air Force One, as its replacement, gifted by the government of Qatar, was sent out of the region without him. Now,
Yeah, I wonder why. Perhaps the runway to develop with all of the like anti-missile systems and the evasive capabilities of a regular Air Force One, the refueling capabilities of regular Air Force One, the like all of the technical capabilities of a normal Air Force One plane is very different than a normal civilian plane that you got from Qatar. Okay? So there is no way that you could redesign a normal Boeing plane that you got from Qatar in 4 months. Normal, at most, the best you can do is, I guess, check it for bugs and then put a fresh coat of paint, which, by the way, controversial opinion, but I really do like the paint job. I will say that. I think this paint job is actually pretty solid. So that's 1 point to give to Donald Trump. I know he chose this. It's clean. It looks fucking dope. But I will say this. There's a reason why he chose not to fly back with this one. Okay?
now sources tell
the reason why he chose not to fly back with this one is because he's now scared that Iran is going to lob ballistic missiles at it or something. So now he's flying back with the OG Air Force One.
CBS News, it was on the recommendation of the Secret Service. The old plane is equipped with sophisticated
look at this paint job, dude.
military defenses and secure communication systems that the new Air Force One lacks. So the Trump administration says the president remains committed to finding a resolution with Iran, but called the recent attacks on the vessels in the Strait of Hormuz terrorism. Nevertheless, a U.S. official tells CBS News talks with Iran will continue. Vlad?
All right, Charlie, let me ask you about what we're learning about that report regarding a new Iranian plot to kill President Trump, and why is it coming to light now?
The big question, the timing is unclear because, there have been active plots in Iran to assassinate President Trump since at least back in 2020. That's when the president ordered the strike that killed Iranian Al-Quds force commander Qasem Soleimani. And you saw those banners during the funerals for the supreme leader calling for the death of Trump. Why Israel is raising this plot now is unclear. You may remember Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, helped convince President Trump to launch the war after that famous visit to the White House in February. The two spoke again yesterday. The reminder of the assassination plot may be an attempt to convince Trump to keep up attacks. Vlad?
All right, Charlie, thank you very much.
Now, as you can see, I'm joined by Professor Michael Clark, because are we returning to all-out war between Iran and the United States? Intensifying strikes across the Middle East overnight. There were US attacks on dozens of sites across.
What about all the other public assassination attempts? Well, there's a difference between first of all, do I think that there's a credible assassination threat? I suspect that there's always a credible assassination threat. The whole point is he gives them an opportunity. He gives them an opportunity to strike if he's in the old plane. You're the president of America. You're fucking around with numerous nations. It makes sense that there is credible threats to your life and your safety. It's a little bit different than, the possible attempts on your life from a radical centrist at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Right? But yeah, when you're flying around, when you're flying around on a fucking plane that doesn't have the same evasive maneuvering capabilities as the previous Air Force One does, when you're flying around in a plane that doesn't have anti-missile systems in it, when you're flying around in a plane that doesn't have the same like nuclear bunker facilities that the Air Force One normally has, and the capacity to get refueled even, retooling a civilian Boeing plane takes like almost a decade. Okay, you got to do it right. It's the president. It's the most important person in the country, the most important person maybe on the planet from the perspective of the people, the engineers working on it. So I know he likes the new plane. He likes it a lot. He thinks it's great. He thinks it looks cool. And the interior is much nicer. But, you know, that's the reason why he just chose not to fly around in that, clearly. Anyway, Michael Clark is back to talk about the intensified strikes between the U.S. and Iran. Look, I think it's pretty obvious what happened here.